Men, do you ever feel like you just can't get ahead? Like you're misunderstood? Like you have no one to talk to that truly hears you?
And women, are you often frustrated, hurt, and saddened in your relationships with the men in your life?
What if there were a community of like-minded men going through the same challenges that would support, hear, and understand what you're going through?
Working together in unison to create understanding, intimacy, and strong connections. That's the Way of the Illuminated Warrior.
Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show is a forum of candid conversations for men and women about men. Being a man today is not always easy. Until now.
All right, welcome to another adventure of the Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show. I'm pretty stoked today to have a new friend and brother on the show, which I'm pretty confident it's going to be an engaging and interesting and informative dialogue between the two of us. So welcome, Ken Katbird Dunn. How you doing, brother?
Hey, Waska, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Very good, very good. I'm excited
Awesome.
that you agreed to join me today. And my first question, because to me, names are like really hold a high vibration of energy. I was born Perry Wayne Finkelstein, and shortly thereafter, in the Hebrew tradition, I was given Pinchas Zev Ben Nissan, which means Perry Wayne, son of Norman. And then in 2015, I accepted my spiritual name, which was dreamt for me in the Shishindi or the Apache tradition, which is Waska Wabus. And, so when people, I meet people and I introduce myself, hey, I'm Waska. And it's usually like, what? Wow, what? So, which is interesting because the name has got a very rich meaning. And part of it is being like a sacred clown. So when people do ask me, I enjoy explaining what that is, the meaning and all. So Catbird, open
Yeah.
up, brother. Where's that from? What
Yeah,
does it
it's funny
mean?
that it's funny. It's a funny conversation. So my given name is Ken, and I don't know how, but somehow along the way, when I introduce myself, people hear cat.
Mhm.
And that's happened many, many times, enough that if I thought I wouldn't meet the person again, I would just let them go with it. Cat? Sure. And just go with it. So there are some people out there that know me as Cat just because I didn't correct them. And then in 2020, when I was about to hike the Appalachian Trail, I had put together a YouTube channel, and I was trying to put together some videos for like family and friends who were concerned, and just try to give people some ideas about what the experience might be like, and just people who are curious as well, friends who are curious about their common questions like, where do you get your food and water? So I had put together this YouTube channel, and I wanted to give it a name that was, more interesting than just like Ken's YouTube channel. And so I started playing around with Cat, and then
You are a cool cat.
you
I
know,
will give you that.
oh well, thanks. And Catbird came to mind for a couple of reasons. One, because it's not just as simple as cat, but also if you're familiar with the Eastern gray catbird, they're a mockingbird that makes one specific sound that sounds similar to a cat, which is how it got its name as catbird. But the thing about the mockingbird, about the catbird, is it is a mockingbird, and I've always kind of enjoyed making funny noises. I've always enjoyed singing, replicating people's voices who I like, and so it was kind of accidental, but the name sort of stuck with me. I didn't really mean for it to be my trail name when I hiked the Appalachian Trail,
Mm.
but it ended up becoming my trail name. And I asked friends to give me a new trail name, and they were just like, "Nope, you're Catbird." Uh, and they tried. I'll give them credit. They did try to give me a new trail name, but it just kept coming back. And I tried 3 times to get a new trail name on long distance hikes, and Catbird just made sense,
It
and so I've
seems to
stuck with
fit
it.
you. Yeah. I
Yeah,
didn't know the
yeah,
meaning, but it seems to fit.
yeah, it really does. And the more I've like just embraced it, the more I realize that it really actually fits, and in a lot of different ways. An interesting sort of side story that is kind of related. I did a 6-day meditation retreat at a retreat center in northern West Virginia called the Bhavana Society, and it's a Theravadan Buddhist retreat center. So I went there to do this retreat, and when you take the precepts, the the abbot will give you a Buddhist name.
Mm.
And so when I was on retreat, I decided to take the precepts, and they ask you to like just write a little bit about why it is that you want to take the precepts, and what your intentions are with the practices. And um, so after I took my precepts and I got my Buddhist name, the name was Subhasita, which means one who is wise with words.
Mm.
That's not a perfect translation, but that's as good as I can give you right now. But but I thought it was funny because there's a relationship between this catbird idea,
Yeah.
vocalization, and then Subhasita, being wise with words. And yeah, the interesting thing is that I found that it's been at times difficult for me to express myself.
Mm.
So this a weird juxtaposition, a weird paradox.
Yeah. That is interesting.
Yeah.
I graduated with a degree in communications, and I like to think I'm a pretty good communicator. I do my best to be aware and really be present when I'm in conversation with people and really think about. Well, I shouldn't say that. My mind works very, very quickly, so I very often I just say what's and it's not always exactly what I want to come out. But it's interesting especially in my family dynamic, the communication has not always been what I would like it to be, and probably the other party as well. So I think there's a lot to that. I think maybe that we either latch onto or offered or it comes into our lives. Like same with you with the catbird and the Subhasita meaning. For me, the communication, like maybe they say you teach what you need to learn. So maybe
Mm,
that's why
right.
we're actually, I don't know. That's part of my belief anyway. That
Right.
just an opportunity to for us to grow. By delving more into those aspects of ourselves. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree actually 100%.
Yeah. So another reason I wanted to have you on, this show is expanded, so we have all men, women, non-binary, all sorts of people on different topics and all. But what's really true to my heart is the men's work. So you and I met at an awesome facility here, Asheville Community Yoga. Actually, Michael Greenberg has been on the show before, and a really beautiful soul. And like I said to him, first time I walked in there, I felt like I was home. Great group of people, wonderful facility, and just a great vibe. And then on Wednesday nights we have our men's gathering, and that's how
Mhm.
you and I connected. And I always like to talk a little bit because hopefully, guys that are watching or whoever's watching, if they know guys who could benefit from. And it doesn't have to be with me, with you, with Asheville Community Yoga, but to really get involved in some kind of men's work, some kind of men's group. I think it's vital, especially more today than ever, to have that connection, to have that support, to have that dialogue, and we have that in our gathering there. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about that if you're cool with it.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So our connection there and what your experience is there and what you'd like to impart to people listening.
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. It's funny because my experience in the men's group has been, it's been in a way slightly transformative. When I went to the men's group, I kind of went knowing that this was an area of my life that it's sort of a growing edge.
Mm.
It's an area, I've dealt with a lot of toxic masculinity in my life. I've been bullied a lot by other men, especially when I was younger. And so and I've dealt with a lot of men who have like really strong values and ideals that, are sort of unwavering. And I knew I needed to kind of work through that. Somebody else who is maybe strong of head and maybe a little bit angry or something like that. It's always been a person that's been difficult for me to work with, and I
Mm.
just knew I needed um, to expand my horizons in that way and to develop relationships with other men who are safe men. To see that not all men are toxic males. They're not all bullies. There are a lot of really great men who are looking for connection and looking
Yeah.
to become their better selves. And even though I knew that, I still had a lot of fear around going into a men's group. And what I found almost immediately was a bunch of other men who kind of have a similar you know, they may not have dealt with toxic masculinity, they may not have dealt with bullying, but they also are men who are, I believe, looking to build better connection with other men and
Absolutely.
looking to, you know, live their best life, you know, in their male form, you know, um, and yeah, I mean, it's been a really great experience for me. You know, it's pushed
Mm,
me in ways that I really didn't anticipate initially. You know, and um, I think like anywhere you go, you know, you're not always going to find that you agree with 100% of what's being said by the
of
other
course.
members, and
Sure.
you know, so it's a good opportunity both to get some additional perspective and also sort of grounded in my own perspective. You know,
Yeah.
sometimes some contrast, sometimes you know another person's belief or uh, values, patterns, routine, whatever, it is exactly what I need to see that what's working for me is working for me. You know, it's that
Yeah.
opposite kind of thing. So, yeah, I mean, the exercises that we do, you know, really allow us to become very well connected, you know, and um, I found a really great community there. You know, I really enjoy going. I don't always want to go, but I
Yeah.
always am glad that I did.
Yeah, yeah. No, I feel that same thing. I mean, I started the way the Illuminated Warrior um group back in 2011. It came through a channeled message, and guys were coming from all over the place. One guy would travel like 6 hours, and you know, he would show up every time, and he's like, Waska, he's like, I wasn't coming. I wasn't coming. But then I'd hear a voice. I'm like, I knew I had to be there. And I've been, you know, I've been to a lot of different men's groups and circles myself. And I just don't, even with our group, you know, at Asheville Community Yoga, sometimes I don't feel like going, you know, but I know like it's always good. It's always something I will hear. And just like you said, also, I don't agree with everything, but that's human nature. That's individual, you know, perception and choice. And but the beautiful thing is that, you know, it helps me like develop empathy for other opinions, for other ways of being, for other you know, choices. Because, you know, I mean, yes, I am right all the time, but I have to acknowledge that, you know. Now you said something before, which I have discussed a lot, you know, in groups with guys. You said I had a fear of going, you know, and I've heard, and I could, you know, share some of these feelings. But what was the fear? What were you you know, what were you fearful about showing up at a men's group?
Well, you know, I think the primary thing is simply the fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think there's also like this fear that maybe I won't belong,
Mm.
fear that I might be rejected. You know, sort of the you know the things, the basic things that we all kind of deal with. You know, I think it's human nature to, you know, we want to belong,
Yeah,
we want to be accepted and loved, and you know, I think that it's kind of normal, you know, to have a
yeah.
little bit of fear that maybe, you know, it's not going to quite go the way you had hoped for it to go. And
That's
so
okay. And
uh
that's okay,
yeah, and
right?
that's okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's where we grow, right? When we go,
absolutely.
okay,
Yeah,
this might not be exactly what I was looking for. I might not be accepted. I might not feel like I belong, and I'm going to go anyway. And that's going to be the way, you know, that I'm actually going to find out. And
absolutely.
you know, if this is not the thing, then at least I know this is not the thing, and I can look for the thing. You know,
Yeah.
I can begin to start to attract my tribe.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, what you said is really important, and that's something that I've learned a long time ago through my indigenous connections, and that's a very integral part of um, not doing the whole program right now. We used to do it in person. It was a 9 month program, so a lot of it, which we're going to talk about, was being on in part and connecting with the land and nature and elementals. But the another very big part was starting off with Buddha mind, like, you know, we all know whatever we know, but starting off with as an empty vessel and allowing whatever new things to come in and shape us in a good way, and let go of all the old paradigms that aren't working. And the other big thing is liminal time, like that time between here and there, that it's that magical space. It's that unknown space that you were talking about, that like, hey, you know, it's taking that step off. You know, I can't see what's there, but I'm
Right.
taking that step off. But that unknown space is really where the magic and the change and the
Mm.
transformation happens, you know. But we have to be willing to like take that step and say, hey, all right, hopefully my bros are going to catch me if I go down. And you know what? If they
Right.
don't, I'll smash my face and it'll be another lesson. Easier said than done, but that first step, that's the beginning of the journey, taking that first step. So, yeah, I mean, and what about vulnerability? Because that's one I've heard a lot. Same for me. Like that fear is like, well, I'm not going to open up. I'm not going to say how I really feel. I'm not going to show emotions and feelings. So the vulnerability
Right.
aspect.
Yeah. When you ask that question, are you asking specifically about showing up at the men's circle or just in general?
Um, well, I was asking about the men's circles, but you
Yeah,
could, speak to either or, sure.
sure. Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I'll speak to it in both contexts or all contexts. You know, yeah, there was certainly a lot of fear of vulnerability. I have gotten to the place in my life where I realized that, without vulnerability, there's no authenticity. I can't let anybody know me if I'm not going to be vulnerable. I can't keep myself guarded and hidden away and expect people to actually know the real person that's inside. So,
Yeah.
um, I knew going into the men's circle that that was going to be part of it, and it was something that I wanted, it was something that I genuinely was seeking, the opportunity to be vulnerable, to show who I really am, and also the opportunity to share space and hold space for others as they were sharing their own vulnerability. Um, but that, I have a long history with that lack of vulnerability, lack of authenticity, you know, um, a lot of time where I just really didn't know who I was, and I wasn't able to really express myself in a vulnerable kind of way, because I was too afraid of being abandoned or shamed or whatever, and so um, yeah, there was definitely some fear there and
Hmm.
also some excitement about it.
Yeah, and those are common feelings and emotions that most guys have. Our stories are different, but they're very similar. Whatever, role models, whether our dad or our uncles or whoever the men were in our lives when we were small, especially those first couple of years, up through 7 years old, and then adolescence and all. I mean, that's had a significant part of shaping, what our belief system is going to be, what our fears are, what our safety zone is. So it's sometimes it takes an entire lifetime to get over that stuff and to remember that, hey, we are divine, we are beautiful, we are, in the form of higher being, God, creator, whatever you want to call it. But it's amazing to me. Like I will say, like, probably every guy that I've ever really sat heart to heart, eye to eye, and connected with, we've all gone through this. We've all had feelings of unworthiness, of like, well, I have to do this, I have to make the money, I have to support, I have to, the have tos that really just stress us out and drain us and suck our life force. So it's like, no, that's not who we, get to be. We get to be divine, beautiful individuals that like could seek what makes us happy. And that's going to bring happiness and love and truth and all the other beautiful qualities when we follow that. But that's not what we're taught, as young little boys. So I feel
Yeah,
that the
no,
paradigm's got to shift, for
yeah.
real equanimity in the world.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree with you. I know the thing that I am hearing coming out of what you're sharing there is kind of one of the underlying things that I've come to understand is that vulnerability is strength. And
Right.
that's sort of the opposite of what I was taught as a child. I was taught that, that strength was, keeping your emotions down and keeping
Right.
your mouth shut, keeping your head down, staying out of the way, that was strength. But that's just not true. Being able to share, your weaknesses and the soft spots with another person, that's real vulnerability, and it takes strength to be able to do that, to share where your weaknesses are, and also to still, you know, be able to stand tall and still, be proud of the person that you are and be able to live authentically and trust in yourself. That's
Yeah.
that's strength.
Yeah, that's a very good point that you make. Trusting yourself, and that's that yin energy. That's that sacred feminine that I think when we're little dudes and even bigger guys, we're always comparing ourselves to that guy, what he's got, what he's doing, what kind of shape he's in, what the money, the car, the woman, whatever. And it's kind of comical. I mean, I was like so introverted when I was a little guy. I mean, I was bullied also, and anybody could have just ran right over me. The smallest guy in the world, because I had no self esteem. And Wherever that came from, I'm not even sure. And then, I worked on it, and I found some really great mentors, and, and I found my voice, and, I pushed myself. I mean, I took like an acting class and a speech class, and I played my guitar in front of people. Oh my God, I would never do that, and I pushed myself. And people that know me now find it hard to believe that I was introverted, because I'm fairly, I mean, I'm not always comfortable, and I still push myself, but I'm not always comfortable, speaking in front of people. And even this, I mean, my career has been in television production behind the camera. I never
Mm.
liked being in front of the camera, but I've kind of gotten over myself to a degree. I'm like, whatever, dude. It's don't be vain. Don't be so concerned about yourself, is and just enjoy. I think that's a big part of it. We got to not take ourselves so seriously. You know. But I do want
Yeah.
to shift into a serious topic, recovery, because I've
Yep.
worked with a lot of guys, have seemed to gravitate to the men's work, that have been in AA, NA, and those programs are awesome. And I've also heard though that they want something else, which I want to. We'll start off with that. We can transition into the work that's in nature on the land, which is, I know what you're doing. So share with the listeners, the viewers, like the beautiful work you're doing and with recovery work, and your own journey, if you're open to that.
Yeah, sure. Let's start with my own journey because I think that's that explains a lot. Um, you know, my so my I have a long experience with addiction, substance use disorder. Alcohol was my primary drug of choice. I also was a big video gamer. I used video games to numb out and to avoid life as it was. I also was a workaholic, and I mean, I like that term is a real serious term. I worked 70 or more hours a week, a lot of weeks, for a lot of years, where I just spent a lot of my time drinking and video gaming and working, or like throwing myself into some other sort of activity just to keep myself numbed out and not feeling my feelings, not dealing with difficult conversations, not dealing with difficult situations. And that was a pretty long journey. It started with video games as a child, and it transitioned to alcohol as an adult, and then productivity and work also as an adult.
Mm.
I tried Alcoholics Anonymous a couple times, and I found that it really just didn't resonate with me. I think part of it was, at the time I had tried going to some men's groups, men's AA groups, and they just weren't the right group for me at the time. And I don't know, had I tried some other AA groups, maybe it would have worked. But the couple that I went to just weren't a good fit. I also wasn't convinced that I had a problem with alcohol. I now realize that I definitely had a problem with alcohol. It's pretty undeniable. But at that time, I was in denial,
Hmm.
and I really didn't see things for how they
We'll
were.
be right back after this.
Do you sometimes feel down, lost, or lonely? Are your finances feeling sluggish? Can your relationships use a healthy tune-up? Don't fear, bro. Help is here. Experience the benefits of connecting with other men who are going through similar challenges. Be supported in our safe, sacred, and inspiring monthly telecircle with the Brotherhood of the Illuminated Warriors. Connect with Waska for one-on-one mentoring with the first session completely free. What have you got to lose? Check out illuminatedwarrior.com or send an email to waska@illuminatedwarrior.com. You're invited to step up your game and join us. You'll be glad you did.
So eventually, I found my way into recovery sort of through the back door. I was going through a difficult relationship, sort of the beginning of the end of my second marriage. And I was really struggling emotionally and struggling with some really intrusive thoughts. And I had started working with a therapist, and it was kind of funny. The way this whole story kind of began was with me having a session with my therapist and him asking me if I could do two things over the course of the next week. And I don't remember what the two things were. First, he asked me, could I track some thoughts that I had had or something like that? I'm not really sure. And then later in the session, he asked me if I could also do another thing. And I said to him, no, I don't think so. I can't obsess about two things at once.
Mm.
Uh, and that that rang in my ear on my drive home from that session. I was like, huh, I can't obsess on two things at once. And I realized that that was actually true, that I had this like really one track mind. I was very single focused kind of mentality. And so I started doing a little research, and I, was kind of convinced that I had OCD. Um, and so I started meditating actually as an intervention for intrusive thoughts. And in the time between that session and the next time I saw my therapist, my intrusive thoughts had softened quite a bit. I had made a lot of progress. And so I started or started looking at the possibility of how could I use mindfulness and meditation
Mm.
as a way to moderate my drinking. Because at the time I didn't think I was going to quit drinking. I thought I could moderate. I still didn't realize that I was actually an alcoholic. Um, so I started looking into that, and I found a group called Refuge Recovery, which is a mindfulness and meditation based recovery group, not based on the 12 steps. It's based on the Four Noble Truths as taught by the Buddha, and the Eightfold Path, also taught by the Buddha. So I found that group, and I went to it thinking I was going to moderate, and not telling anybody, of course, that my plan was to moderate versus abstinence.
Man plans
So
and God laughs, and Buddha laughs, right?
So yeah, it's true. So I went to that meeting for about 3 months, just trying like, and I had become abstinent. I decided I needed to like dry out, and I wasn't working 70 hours a week. I wasn't playing video games. I wasn't allowing myself to smoke weed, and I wasn't drinking alcohol. And over the next 3 months, trying to figure out, okay, how can I get back to drinking again? What's like, how do I use this program to get back to
Mm.
drinking? And before I could actually formulate that plan, I realized that I needed to be sober. I woke up one morning and I was like, shit, this is recovery thing is actually what I need.
Yeah.
And I was pissed off about it, to be honest with you. I was just like, that's not what I want. I want to drink like a regular person.
Mm.
Um, and so I still, for the next few days, I still was kind of convinced that I was going to somehow or another use this program to moderate my drinking. But on like the third morning, I woke up and like that all left me. I was just like, okay, if this is what I got to do, it's what I got to do. And so I threw myself into it, and ultimately I started another chapter of that program in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. That has now transitioned to another program called Recovery Dharma,
Mm.
which is a pretty big fellowship across the country. Um, and so that had been my primary recovery tool for quite a while. I also then later got into a program called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families, which is a 12-step program
I'm a
based
member.
on the same. Oh, are you okay?
Well, I never really resonated with that, but as a kid, my mom had us go because my dad,
Right.
was always drinking, so I have experience with it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So that's my other fellowship, and I practice both of those fellowships currently,
Nice.
and they've been a big part of my path. But you had asked about, like this voyage into the outdoors. And so,
Yes.
just to touch on that. So I currently um, run a small business called Expedition Recovery. I do experiential peer recovery coaching, or experiential peer support. I also do experiential group facilitation, and I guide backpacking trips. And the way that I got to this place in my life, I had been in my previous life, I was an IT guy.
Mm.
I was a cybersecurity specialist for the 6 years prior to starting this business. And I had been in IT since I was in the Air Force in 1989. So I had 30 years in the technology field, um, and it never felt like purpose to me.
Mm.
Um, However, in 2020, I decided I was going to hike the Appalachian Trail. I was able to get a leave of absence from my IT job. At the time, I worked for county government in Pennsylvania. and I was able to get a leave of absence to go hike the Appalachian Trail. And of course, 2020 was during the height of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I went out and hiked for a month, and then at the suggestion of the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, I got off trail. I was off trail for a month, and I said, okay, screw them. I'm getting back on trail. So I got back on and finished my hike in 2020. And during that time, I realized, see, I kind of used that hike as my version of going to treatment. I didn't go to treatment when I was in early recovery. I kind of skipped that part by spending 3 months thinking I was going to moderate instead. But I wanted some experience that was going to give me an opportunity to really go inward and really learn more about myself and really just see what I was made of, try to understand some of my motives and see my patterns and all that kind of stuff, and just really be connected with myself more. And it was during that Appalachian Trail hike that I realized that what I needed to be doing was something in the outdoors, that was, a part of my future. And I didn't know at that time what it was, but I knew there was something there,
Beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah, actually, during that hike, another friend of mine, somebody that I had met through one of my fellowships, was also hiking, and she had gone through. She had hiked ahead of me, and after she had finished hiking, she had done a certification as a field guide and working with people in recovery. And I was like, oh, this is an intersection, working with people in recovery and doing this outdoor work. This has got some interest. So I finished my hike, and then the next spring, in the spring of 2021, I went and I did some training called Adventure Recovery Coaching Training, which is basically what I do. The idea is you work as a recovery coach with people who are experiencing substance use disorder. You go outside, you do activities that the individual is interested in, whether that's a day hike or whether it's backpacking or rock climbing, whitewater rafting, whatever, whatever is the thing that they're interested in doing. And in that container, then you work on the peer support stuff. You help people push their own boundaries. You show them where they have made progress, help them build goals. These are all the basic kind of things that, peer supports do. We hold each other up, we are cheerlead for one another. We provide some level of accountability and and help each other live our best lives.
Yeah. I love it, man.
Yeah. And it was during that training, actually, in the spring of 2021, that I sort of had my spiritual awakening. I had a long experience of not really feeling connected with higher power. And even, this is even after, practicing my Buddhist practice, mindfulness meditation. I still, there was something there, but I hadn't gotten to that point where I realized that it was like, okay for me to just, to find my own path, that I didn't have to take somebody else's offering. It didn't have to be, it doesn't have to be just one way,
Right.
And it was sort of during that training when I was sitting in the woods in Massachusetts in the snow on a rock under a bunch of pine trees, when I realized where that source was coming from.
Out in nature,
And
man. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. And I knew then, like this was the work I needed to do, that this is the work that's been calling me. It was my purpose. It's a perfect match with my spiritual path. It really just brings all the things together.
That's great, man.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yep.
You reminded me actually of a brother that's in the Illuminated Warrior Circle. Are you familiar with this book, Camping with Kierkegaard?
The title is familiar, but I don't know
Well,
that
you
I
might know
do.
Kierkegaard. It's the
Yeah.
philosopher. But yeah, it's really interesting. And the guy has got connections here, like in Hendersonville and hiking, the AT and Pisgah and all. But it's he's a camper, a biker, and he's a philosopher. I think you might find it interesting. Anybody watching, if you're I think it relates pretty well.
Right.
Because the that connection with nature, like you're saying, it doesn't really matter if it's rafting, if it's biking, if it's hiking. Yeah, I mean, spirit, creator, God, whatever you want to call them, is in everywhere. It's everywhere. But I have found, and that's why the work that I've done with the guys has been so integral to being on the land, because I've always said my temple is out in nature. That's where I've always gone to find my solace, to find my healing, to find my connection. I've never really seen a guy who hasn't at least allowed and released and tried to be out on the land, and I've had guys who are city dwellers, are like, very uncomfortable, that have been like, wow, I never slept that well than last night after our session, our ceremony. And like, there's nothing like it. Connecting with Gaia, connecting your luminous roots into the Mother Earth, and like
Mm.
allowing, all that is to like reach us. So yeah, that's powerful stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, it certainly is. Yeah. Yeah,
Really
it's been
powerful
very
stuff.
powerful to me. I know when things aren't going well, it may be because I have not been connected enough, and
Yeah.
it can be just that simple, that I need to get back to nature.
Nature is just really, I think, for anybody, just such a great source to connect. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about meditation, because I know you have a meditation practice. I've had some incredible experiences in the Buddhist tradition with Vipassana meditation. I had done a 10-day, they called it a retreat, but it was one of the hardest things that I've ever done. Actually, I think it was Sherburne, Massachusetts. And interesting enough, I want to say experimenting, but I was doing ayahuasca with a group that I really trusted, a wonderful, shaman from Peru. And after that experience, I haven't done it since. I haven't been called to really do anything in that vein, in that way since, because that experience I had with the Vipassana meditation brought me to such an incredible place. Yes, it took more intention, it took more time, it took more focus, but it was in some ways it was more powerful than doing even plant medicine. And I'm not giving my opinion on plant medicine either way. I think there's a lot of value to all of this, but the meditation practice is incredibly powerful. So share a little bit about your experience with meditation, because I know you lead meditation at Asheville Community Yoga, and and your experience with that.
Sure. Yeah, well, as I mentioned, I was able to find this gateway into recovery through meditation. And I think I'd say there are two real important parts of meditation that have really benefited me the most. And those two would be insight and acceptance.
Mm,
And I have had a lot of meditation practices where I've gotten insight into things where I had no insight, where I didn't understand my patterns, where I didn't understand why maybe I had certain thoughts or feelings, why I would do certain things. And through meditation, not ever intentionally trying to find the answer. And I
mm,
think for me, that's been the case where when I can just sit with myself and literally just give myself some attention, whether it's paying attention to my breath, paying attention to felt senses in my body, paying attention to my thoughts by just noticing thoughts arising and fading away, not
hmm
giving them attention, but just seeing them pass. Where I have been able to just tap into my own internal insight and understand myself better. I've had some things arise where I'm just like, huh, I had no idea that this pattern is just repeating itself, because I had become so attached to the pattern, so attached to the thoughts, that when the thought would come up, I would be immediately in the middle of it,
yeah,
and rather than being able to like sort of take a step back and go, oh, look at that. I was in it, and
yeah,
I was caught and unable to separate myself from it in a way that would allow me to see what my thoughts were, and I had mentioned denial. Meditation was really what enabled me to be able to see my denial and to see the things that I was in denial of, and just be like, oh shit, there's that, like this,
yeah.
this big thing that I have been avoiding, um, and not consciously avoiding, subconsciously avoiding
Yeah.
to the degree where I was not visible to me, and
Yeah.
and be able to see it in a way that I was able to actually become unstuck from it and start to build some new patterns, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, our
Um,
subconscious thoughts have such power. That's why I think the meditation is so key, and it's not always the easiest thing to do. It does require, carving out that time, having that presence, and sitting there, like even if it's just 2 minutes of practice, could be so powerful. I mean, that Vipassana was just such an incredible experience for me, and I still do it. And it is insight meditation. So for those who don't know what that is, that's how the Buddha became, went from Siddhartha Gautama to the insights and the awakening of being the Buddha. It's not religious, it's not denominational, it's basically experiential. You're scanning your body. It's like it's incredible. And it reminds me of like what you're saying here. So it's whether we label these meditations or not, it's having that insight into like, oh, okay, hey, this is what's going on here, and I can heal. I can have a better quality of life, and I don't have to suffer. And that's the, as you know, that's the tenets of Buddhism. It's like, liberation from suffering, and we suffer because we're attached to things. We cling to things, and we push ourselves away and avert things, and it sounds easy, but it's not easy. So like, how
right.
attached are you to your phone? We've did that in our men's gathering in Asheville. Hey, put your phone down for, X amount of time. And, a lot of us have a hard time doing that. But what is it?
Yeah.
It's a freaking phone. It's electronics. It's not a person. It's not a human connection. Like, why are we so attached to this thing? This vibration of, ones and zeros in this whole digital realm, rather than connecting. So there's a lot to be said about that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of what you said there really resonates with me. The other part of that is not only the detachment from those thoughts and emotions and experiences in life, but then also the acceptance portion of it. Which for me has become like the practice. Not so much that I am saying that the things that are happening are okay. I'm not condoning them or saying that they are of value. However, recognizing that they are, that the things that are happening, and if I choose to accept them or not, they're still going to happen.
Yeah.
And likewise, just myself looking at my own self and my patterns. I've come to believe that I really can't change anything about myself, even if I wish to change it, until I accept it. Because until I accept it, I actually don't see it for how it really is. As long as I'm pushing it away, I'm not allowing it to come to light of day, and so
Hmm.
I'm not seeing it for its true self, whatever that thing is. Whatever the pattern is, or the thought process,
Right.
or what have you. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's taken me a long time to get there. For a long time, I thought that meditation was going to be, for lack of a better term, a spiritual bypass. I really thought
Mm.
that this was going to be a way of just loving myself without accepting myself.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I've gotten to the point where I realize, it doesn't work like that.
No,
I'm still
it
gonna
doesn't.
still gonna be me. Um,
Yeah.
and the way through this thing is to accept myself as I am, and accept life as it is,
Yeah.
and accept you as you are, without expecting any of us to change or be different. We change because we want to, and because it makes us a better person, not because we don't accept ourselves for how we are.
Right. Well, you're speaking like which I love, the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Yeah. Which
Yeah,
is which is
absolutely.
which is a beautiful thing. So this has been a great conversation. So before we close, I want to give you the opportunity to share anything left unsaid, anything else that you wanted the audience to know, any pearls of wisdom you want to throw out there before we close.
Boy, that's loaded. I mean,
Yes, it is.
I think I just said the thing that has been the most critical to me is that, we can all accept ourselves for how we are. We already have everything inside us that we could possibly ever need. And it's just a matter of us, um, allowing ourselves to be and accepting ourselves as we are. So I'd say, as far as pearls of wisdom, that's the one. Yeah, I'd love to share about the other things that I'm doing. So, my business is Expedition Recovery LLC. And as I had mentioned, I do one-on-one recovery coaching as well as group recovery coaching. I facilitate groups at treatment centers, community organizations. Those are all experiential groups. So I do a lot of the things that I do with individuals. So that would be like community drumming, day hikes, frisbee golf, rock climbing, mindfulness meditation, and more. I won't go through the entire list, but if it's an experiential social activity that can be facilitated and there's some way to gain some insight from it, I can facilitate it.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you, Katbird, for taking the time and sharing this rich conversation today. I think it was a lot of good content that we shared. And so if you guys enjoyed what Katbird had to offer, his information will be on the screen and in the show notes. So reach out to him and check out some of his expeditions. Find some healing, find some love, and get out there in nature. And, and I want to invite any of the guys. We have our monthly Illuminated Warrior Men's Circle. If you guys want to connect, just reach out to me. My information's on there as well. I think it's February 22nd, I believe, is the next one. But regardless, man, connect with the men. And as I always end the show, let's continue to illuminate our paths with loving kindness.
Thanks, Waska.
You got it, brother.
Visit IlluminatedWarrior.com if you'd like to go deeper and find out more about what's available within the Illuminated Warrior Men's Transformational Community. Tune in next time for more candid conversations for men and women about men on the Way of the Illuminated Warrior Talk Show. Until next time, illuminate your path with loving kindness.